Hi everyone, this is Burgundy. Welcome to the Yoga Happiness Podcast. Today I'm talking with Victor Dandridge. He's a dear friend of mine. Victor's a writer, publisher, graphic designer, educator. He's a leading new voice for innovation and production within the self-publishing market. He's found acclaim with his own imprint called Vantage In-House Productions, also the weekly internet review series Black, White, and Red All Over, and the pop culture podcast Hall of Justice. Wanting not only to entertain but also to educate, Victor launched his You Create Comics line, which is a unique bridge between comics and classroom fundamentals. Fair warning for those of you who are not watching the video, Victor's got his adorable daughter Juno in the studio with us. So that's the little sort of beast that you're going to hear in the background. Anyway, it was a delightful afternoon, and I hope you enjoy. You and I have known each other for...
Don't do that, math. Do that now.
A very long time.
Yes.
I know. I feel like it's close to 20 some years.
I don't think that you're wrong. I don't think that you're wrong at all.
Because I remember, because you and I were working at Utrecht together.
Yes, that was early odds. Yeah, I was gonna say that's early odds.
Yeah.
So that's almost 20 years ago unto itself.
Yeah.
So and I think we met while Darlene was my teacher.
Yeah.
So
when was that?
That would have been 98, 99. No. Yeah, 98, 99. So yeah.
So yeah, 20 years.
20 years. Let that shake out.
It's weird being old enough that 20 years ago, I was still a functioning adult.
Right.
20 years ago.
I wasn't, but
I mean,
still. We're in that place where we can say 20 years ago. And what we really mean is like 10 years ago, but still mean the 1990s. Like that's where we are. Yeah. And it's the craziest thing in the world because me and Adriana, we talk about it all the time. We're like, oh, just 10 years ago. We're like, wait, no, add another 10 to that. So yeah, we're in that place.
That's a long time.
Yes.
And so when you and I first met, so you were my mom's student.
Yes.
What were your art goal? What was your life goal at that time?
I was all about comic books, and it's a funny thing because even going to an Arts Impact high school like Fort Hays, they weren't quite prepared for comics. It was this taboo art form. It was the not quite real art form of things. Yeah. But no, the art program that I met at your mom in was commercial art. And comic books definitely are commercial art, but that's not necessarily the thought process. It was graphic design, advertising, marketing, not comics. I had been in love with comics since I was 10, and it kind of, after my uncle died, I have such a Peter Parker sort of origin story, it's kind of crazy. After my uncle died when I was 10, I was like, that's where I want to go. I want to go to comic books. And so it kind of guided me forever, and so that was my intention, was strictly comic books all the time.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's funny now because I hate drawing, but that was, I know, I despise it now. But that was my life. Like literally, I wanted to draw comics, and that was it.
So then, so when you say you hate drawing though,
yes.
So then what is your art then? How do you do?
I say I'm a writer. Yes, so I'm a writer.
Okay.
I hire
still
artists.
An artist.
Well, sure, of course.
Yeah.
But I hire illustrators to help visually interpret the stories that I write. So it's one of those things where because I have a background in art, I can communicate with them on their level, in their in the right terminologies and jargon that they need to best actualize those ideas. But me doing it, no, I hate doing it. I can't stand it anymore.
Wow. So and I think so a lot of times when I talk to artists about like my boyfriend, he's thinking about like a graphic design job.
Right.
Well, then you're doing your passion for a job.
Yes.
And then you start to hate it. So is that what happened?
No, I think what ultimately happened for me, I was an okay illustrator, but I peaked. I hit a point where I wasn't advancing my skills, nor was I interested in the different challenges that I would need to actually advance my skills. I found more enjoyment on challenging myself as a writer than as an artist anymore. And once I fell out of love with it, then I was just like, I'm not gonna do it anymore because I'm not doing it for me. There was a portion where I was like, well, I did promise my uncle that I was going to do this, but I looked at it and said, well, no, my actual promise was that I was going to make myself something in the comic industry. I didn't say what. So, so it was like one of those things where I was like, well, actually, I like writing more. Let me do that. I've actually been writing longer than drawing, so let me do that. Focus on what my strengths are and go for it. When you have a job, or make a job out of your passion, it can get very difficult. And a lot of people say, like, if you do the thing that you love, you never work a day in your life. But when it comes to making comics, absolutely. I don't work a day in my life. But if you ask me to draw comics, now it's with a job.
When was it that you decided or realized, like, I don't like to draw, I like to write?
Yeah.
And then how did you make that change?
I was actually in college. I was at CCAD.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a very interesting thing. So your mom helped me get into CCAD. First and foremost.
Right.
So I love her so very much for that because she gave ultimate effort to what was not even my first, second, or third choice school. I wanted to go to Savannah College of Art and Design because at the time I still wanted to draw comics.
Okay.
And so Savannah was one of the few schools at the time that offered up to a master's degree in sequential illustration. So,
and that's what it's called?
Yeah, that's the hoity-toity name for it. Like, you can call it sequential arts, sequential illustration, narrative arts. It means anything that is telling a story with sequences. It was a nice term coined by Will Eisner. He was kind of the first person to say, oh, the sequential arts, because to say you draw comic books was a dirty word back then. So, he also coined the term graphic novel, so he didn't want to tell people, hey, I draw comics, I draw cartoons. It was, I'm a sequential artist, I draw graphic novels. So, going to CCAD, I met a lot of people there that would greatly impact my future, but I didn't meet the right kind of instructors to embrace what I wanted to do, which is ironic. Like, they actually had a comic book arts class, and their former teacher of it was Daryl Banks, who I met while I was at Fort Hays, fell in love with looking at what he could do, black comic creator, the first one I had ever met. He was no longer the comic teacher, it was, am I still in tea if I say the name? I'm going to say it. Joe Crony at the time. And what got me was, it was my freshman year, and I had done some sketches, just simple character sketches, whatever, and I happened to show them to him, and he went and regaled how good they were, and that was not what I wanted. I was at that place artistically where I needed to be torn apart, where I needed to be told what I couldn't do, and have that hammered in. Like, I'm overtly an arrogant man, like, I can admit this completely, and I needed someone who was better than me, higher than me, to say, you ain't shit yet.
Wow.
Slow your roll, And I needed it.
Yeah.
And the moment that he looked at my sketch and was like, oh my God, these are so good, I can't wait to have you in my class, I was like, you'll never teach me anything. Like, I can't learn from you. No, I definitely needed someone to put me in my place.
Yeah.
And for him to basically, applaud me for what I could look at now and be like, no, I'm not that good, man. You shouldn't have been that way. You should have been like, okay, you got skill, but I'm going to teach you boom, 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 And that would have been like, yes, now I'm ready. Like, I'm going to do this and it's going to be fantastic. What's funny, and again, I'm still in awe with you. If you ask Joe Crony now, he'll tell you that I was one of his best students. I never had him for a teacher, ever.
Really?
Never. Because I left the school. We had this conversation my freshman year. And you have to be a sophomore before you can take the comic book arts class. I never made it to sophomore year. I don't think I made it through my second semester of freshman year. So I definitely didn't make it to sophomore. So it's one of those things that, like, when he claims me as one of his students, I laugh because ultimately what it is a statement of the things that I've achieved as an individual creator that he's taking credit for, but I almost am like, if I was one of your students, I would be pissed because that dude was never in your class. Why are you claiming him?
Right.
That's not right. So it's an interesting sort of thing, but
I mean, it's kind of flattering.
It is kind of flattering. like I said, I'm arrogant, so I can be like,
take it. I mean, whatever.
You want me to be your student, I know, but no, I was never a student. The other thing was, like, I had a drawing arts teacher who actually told me that my illustration skills were good. Sequential arts, storytelling, maybe not so much in my opinion, but he said that he was disappointed by the fact that I would be wasting my skills as an illustrator in comics. And it just kind of went to show that CCAD was not the school that I needed to be at for learning. You know, if I'm going to do this, what's better for me, I found, you know, extreme satisfaction enjoying writing. Maybe that's the route that I need to go. Transferred over to OSU for writing. And that was, it would have been a good move if. Yeah, it would have been a good move if. When I actually got into a writing class, I was older. I did some remedial classes, had some time with it, did it like a year or two, and then went to an English class. And at that point, I'm 21 years old. I've actually worked. I've got the means of making a family on the way. I'm in a room with 17, 18-year-olds that are upper crust who have never worked before. Yeah. And so our perspectives were very, very at odds. And I don't want to make it sound like, you know, it was truly a me versus them, but it was definitely an understanding sort of thing, where there's this book called Nickel and Dime, and our teacher instructed us to read it. And this book has stuck with me, I mean, literally for years at this point, where this woman was wanting to see how you could survive off a minimum wage. So she's upper middle class, outright. She puts a sum of money away in an account so that in case of emergency, if she absolutely needs it, she won't starve. Sure. She goes to an area, finds low rent housing, it takes on like a minimum wage job, you know, like at one point she works at Walmart, you know, something simple. Her whole thing though is like she's writing an article about can you raise children on minimum wage. Well, she didn't have any children with her because her children were grown. And she would like have enough money set aside to get herself a little beat up car to drive to and fro, and all these different like safeguards. So like immediately I took offense to this. I'm like, this story is
not real.
It's not real at all. I'm like, what are you talking about? Right. So I'm like really, none of this is legit. And like I took huge offense to it. And the teacher's like, well, it's, you know, you can't deny her experiences. I was like, yes, I can, because they're not real. Like she's engineering poverty, which is a slap in the face to anyone that's actually suffered poverty. Right. So I couldn't fulfill that class, and it was a prereq for any sort of writing thing that I wanted. So at that point, I was like, you know what, screw this. I'm just going to start making comics. Like, forget the degree. A degree doesn't mean that I can make comics, it just means that I can sit in the classroom for X amount of time. So yeah, like, I could not abide by the writing measures there, so it was like, you know what, if I'm going to truly learn anything, produce something, if people buy it, then it's good. If they don't buy it, then I gotta learn. So, go, you know, and that kind of became my mode for a few years. Yeah.
So then, to clarify and not to judge, so you didn't finish college?
No, good for you. Not at all. I am a happy dropout. I tell people that all the time.
This is definitely not an industry. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to put words to it. It's not an industry where it's required.
No, not at all. The thing is, like with comics in particular, especially from the art side, all you have to do is be capable. You know, if you can produce a portfolio or produce a book, you're showing your skill set. So a degree doesn't really say that you can do much of anything. It's just, hey, look, I did however many years of art school. Oh, good for you.
That's nice.
You know, right? I could argue that in my immediate circle, the people that stayed and finished their degrees have not gotten, I don't want to say as far, but they don't have the same clout factor that I've acquired by just doing it.
Yeah.
And that matters a lot more You can say, hey, I graduated from this school, or I can say I've worked with this person, and all of a sudden that gives me more clout because that guy has made their own lane in the comic book world. And so if they have any sort of affinity or association with me, then it means that I must have done something, degree no degree, of worth. So yeah, it's just kind of worked better for me. I don't tell people not to go to college. One of the biggest things that I got from college were some of the friends that I met that I've worked with, and the networking skills involved. Like the actual institution wasn't great, but some of the things that I got out of it, I never would have met some of these people if not for this situation.
Sort of socialized you a little bit.
Right, very, very much so. In fact, it's one of the jokes between myself and there's a young guy, I say young, like I'm young, Brian Moss, local comic book creator from the South Side like I am. He went to South High School. I would have gone to Marion Franklin, so we technically would have been in rival neighborhoods. But we grew up in the exact same area. Like, ironically, I knew his sister because my first job, she was best friends with a girl that worked with me. So like I knew his sister, had never met him, had never seen him or anything until we went to CCAD together.
Oh, wow.
And upon meeting, we're like, how have we never met before? Like we are in the same circles, we've been to the same places, all kinds of things. We've never met. So, and we did a book together a few years ago called Old Crazy and the 40 Ounces of Death. And it's a great little, fun little read, but again, it's born out of CCAD, not anything else. So I give it its credit. So yeah, that's kind of my journey, my little intro, origin story.
And then, what is I'll be honest, like I can't keep track of all the things the things that you do, like,
no, you can't. Not even me.
like, because I mean, in my view, I feel like Vantage House was the first thing that happened, or
kind of, yes.
How did that happen?
Okay, so
what's the order of things?
The order is hilarious. I'm gonna write this book, and it's gonna be amazing because people are like, "That did not happen." Like, it actually did. So when I was 13, I created my imprint, which was called WizWorld Inc. I have an uncle named Byron, and they used to call him the Wiz, and I was like, that's the coolest name ever. So I called myself Wiz, and I would sign everything 33 and a third, because I just love that number. So, I know, it's so goofy.
I mean, I'm not going to judge.
No, judge away. It's so hilarious. It's so hilarious. That's the shoot. Yeah, it's true. She's like, I know, you don't even know. Let me tell you things. So, WizWorld Inc. was going to be my imprint forever. Like, when I first started writing stories, that was the plan. I'm going to launch WizWorld Inc. It's going to be great, blah, blah, blah. I decided to actually start making comics and start doing work as WizWorld Inc. And I actually applied to a local convention here, and they thought that I was a comic convention company, Wizard World.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah, and so they refused to let me in. They're like, no, because you're just trying to come in and take over our show. And I'm like, no, I'm a comic creator. And they're like, no, we've heard of you, we don't like you. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
I might need to change my name. So that's kind of where Vantage in-house came from. It was like, okay, well, Vantage is a word that I had found in reading at some point, and I'm like, a favorable position. Like I said, I'm arrogant. I think I have a favorable position. I thought things through in ways that my contemporaries haven't. Yeah, I'm at a vantage space. I'm dope. Thank you. I was working from home, so in-house, very simple, and in productions, because we might not just limit it to comic books. So if I can make anything, then it's a production.
Right.
With the hands on the
So then the full name is Vantage In-House Productions.
Yes, or VIP. So.
Oh my God.
I told you I'm arrogant. I told you. It's like right there. It's so right there.
It's a little disgusting.
It is. But of course, it's not as arrogant to not be VIC, which would have been my initials, which a lot of people thought. They're like, oh, Vantage because Victor, and I'm like, no. And they're like,
actually, I kind of did wonder where that word came from.
That's weird. Now, okay. Totally exclusive drop here. I have every intention of getting rid of Vantage In-House Productions by the time I'm 40. So I have 4 more years of Vantage In-House Productions.
Okay.
The next thing is to go back. I know, I said that I'm 40. I saw it. I'm sorry, Burke. I love you. I love you. I love you. I was but a baby.
Yes. No, he's a little kid.
sister's telling on me.
I'm gonna pinch your tongue.
The next company name for me is Victionary. So it's me going back to my super me roots and telling the stories that I came up with when I was 13. You know, the stories I haven't told. So, you know, it's taking account to all the things that I've learned and trying to redefine what it means to be a comic creator.
So I keep seeing all these things where you work with kids and you create comics and all that.
So, and this is the funny part, like, so Dandridge House is the parent company.
Okay.
You Create Comics, I started virtually at the same time.
Okay, that's why I thought that you'd been around. You're sort of re-promoting it or something.
Yeah, I'm basically putting more of a focus on it. I've had it, and it's been this back burner brand of mine for 8 years now. And in all honesty, You Create actually predates Dandridge House by 2 years, just in terms of like me actually doing something. The first You Create piece was my character crafter. And the first sketch, any idea, back in 2008 or 9.
Okay.
So it was after Jeff Smith did, he had a video called The Cartoonist, DVD thing. They did a premiere of it at the Wexner. And I was there, Tom Spurgeon interviewed him. I was so inspired, I literally went home and sketched out the very first character crafter plan. So this was like 2008, and then I put it away for 2 years, about 2-3 years. At that time, I was writing a book called Hot Shot for Freestyle Comics, another local imprint. And through that, like, I was also doing the lettering, and so I was using Illustrator. And it wasn't until I had used Illustrator for 2 years that I realized that I actually knew how to build a workbook. And I could just make what I had intended to make. Like, it wouldn't be something I had to farm out to anybody else. I could do it myself. And so once that happened, I was like, oh, let's do You Create Comics. So yeah, so with You Create Comics, it is basically me giving back to comic books and bringing it into the classroom, because I hated reading as a kid. Like, I hated it. It was the worst thing in the world. You couldn't bribe me to read books. Like, I hated them. It wasn't that I had any deficiencies. I just thought that the stories were boring. And so everything changed when they announced that Superman was going to die. And I'm like, well, that I want to read. Like, let me see that. That's awesome. And, you know, bombastic and over the top, and yes, please. So recognizing that it has an educational component to it inherently, I'm like, well, let me show people that this is what this does. You know, obviously I can speak well. I get the favorite thing. Oh, your mom must be a teacher, and I'm like, no, she's not. Well, why do you speak so well? Because it's English, and I learned it just like you did. Like,
wow, that's insulting and racist.
It is. It's my favorite thing in the world.
So you're thinking I should speak Ebonics?
Yeah, definitely.
That's really
Although I'm not going to lie, I have considered applying for the Ebonics translator position, just because it's funny. Like, that's funny to me.
Well, and that reminds me of, who is it? Jordan Peele, who does Obama's.
I love it.
And your translator.
Because it's so true. Like, people have this assumption that as an African American male, I'm supposed to speak and carry myself in a certain way.
That's ridiculous.
It's the greatest thing in the world. I've used it a bajillion times within the You Create Comics line. It's not even a joke. I did, like, my favorite thing in the world was I got booked for a library presentation out of city. I'll be nice and I won't give this place's location just in case I'm bringing it back.
Okay.
But I walk in and I say, hey, I'm Victor Dandridge, I'm here for the You Create Comics stuff. And the woman looked at me like, you're joking. Like, it can't be you. And I'm like, oh, but it is.
Wow.
Yeah, hi. This is me, this is my company, my thing, I'm here. What ends up happening, every single time that I encounter this immediate sort of, oh, one of them, I do my job, I do it really, really well, and immediately they go, can we bring you back? You know, because I've now destroyed their stereotype view of me, and now their impression, I hate to say it, even if I did a mediocre job, to them it's so good because they didn't expect me to do well at all. I know, it's so bad, it's so bad, but at the same time, it's alright, I'll use it.
But you want people to underestimate.
Yes, please underestimate me.
Yeah.
Because, especially when the check is already cut, underestimate me so when I walk in and blow the doors off,
Yeah.
You don't know, you have no idea what I just did to you, and you can't wait for me to do it again.
Right.
That's the best thing in the world, because that's how repeat business happens all the time. So yeah, that's basically where you create comics comes from, is this need to try to share, you know, say,
and
hey.
you're just working with kids.
No, and that's the weird thing. Like, I started it with the intention of being in classrooms. I ended up connecting with comic book conventions, and so it's grown to be open to everyone. And through that, go that way. Thank you. Yes. Through that, we've actually started to develop, and I always say we, because I hate, like, despite how arrogant I am, I say we. We have products for traditional practitioners of making comics. So if you make comics in a traditional sort of way, non-digital, I actually have products that will help you do it. You're not clever. I saw that. So, and it all kind of started out of work in the classroom. So, yes, it definitely has programming aspects that are key to working with kids, but the range of people that can use it is everyone. Virtually everyone. Yes, thank you.
That's very cool.
That's been the interesting challenge, is how can I take comic books and show things educationally without that being my specific background. That's been the fun part, because yes, I've had teachers, obviously. Am I a teacher? No.
Why don't you call yourself a teacher?
Because there are people that have put in a lot more time and effort into becoming teachers,
I
and I don't want to.
think it's BS, Victor.
It might be.
It's not disrespecting teachers with a certification. It's not disrespecting. You're a teacher. You're a teacher.
Okay. Well, okay. To be fair, like, the other thing that I get teased about, my grandmother is like, well, that's your minister. And I'm like, whoa. And she's like, no, that's your ministry. And I'm like, cut that out. She's like, I'll just say it. So I get real hesitant to claim a particular occupation that I have not had to study for.
Well, it's interesting to see that you have some humility.
That's true, because it's normally not my bag.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I mean, it's out of respect, and I get it.
I try. You know, I'm arrogant, but I'm not that bad. I'm not a monster.
Was there ever a question of doing anything but this?
Yes. I've had 9-to-5 jobs.
Have you really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know I worked with you at YouTube.
Well, yeah, but even that could be argued like it's in the art world, right?
Yeah.
When I decided that I was going to quit and make comic books full time, I worked for the state. Like, I had a cushy state job.
Wow.
And it was one of those things where my financial needs were being met. Sure. Stop. Good money, nice house, but I wasn't fulfilled personally. You know, and it drove me nuts. Like, it was one of those things where what I came to the quick realization, talking to different people that work for the state, so many people that had dreams, but they didn't pursue them out of practical reasons. You know, I got bills to pay, I got this, I got that.
Yeah.
And I made a deal with my dad, who worked for the state, he still does, and was ardently against me leaving the state, because he's like, look, you got a family, you got kids, you make your money like you're supposed to, and you do this comic stuff on the side. Like, that's the mature thing to do. And I'm like, I hear you, I really, really do, but I have a need. Like, I can't even explain to you how getting up every day and doing this job, no matter how much they pay me, is not going to give me nearly as much fulfillment as if I go make comic books. And
which sounds ridiculous.
It does.
Like, any
It
good
absolutely
parent
does.
is like, no.
I will tase you and put you in a box, and you will work. And it's one of the things where even though I am a parent, if my child, any of them, come to me and say, Dad, I want to do something crazy instead of this normal thing, I can't say I don't have the same reaction, even though I've done it.
Right.
The only thing that I can do is tell them even now is like, if there's something that you love and you want to do this, you do it no matter who says no, including me.
Right.
You know, if you're willing to go up against me to do this, then that says how important this is to you. And you have to, if you're going to do anything, it has to be that important.
Right.
So I quit. Like I said, cushy state job. I worked there for 5 years. I was at the Bureau of Workers' Comp, and it was easy. It was literally easy job. Like flat out, if I worked 5 hours out of the day, that was advanced. Like that's, I mean, it's a known statement about the state. Like, you know, the only thing better than state money is federal money.
Right.
So yes, I've been in the trenches. I've done the 9 to 5 gig. I left it behind. You know, I was 27 and I was like, look, I'll quit. And within 3 years, if I don't make something of myself, I'll go back to the state. Even if I have to start all over, work 30 years and then retire, I'm still retiring at only 60. So that's still pretty good with this plan. Of course, you know, you say something like this, and without deeper conversation, my dad was like, you're out of your mind, this isn't happening. You know, no. But what he didn't realize was that I actually had a plan. And he couldn't have known this, and he could have been okay with it without having seen the plan in action. Like that's just, you know, my father's a very smart man, but at the same time, he's a very practical man. You take care of yours and this, that, and the other. So it actually took until the summer, or I'll say the spring of 2011. I quit work October 10th, 2010. So I'm literally just celebrating 8 years of this on Monday. I quit. I went to New York Comic Con, and that was how I've celebrated my anniversary of doing this for the last 8 years.
It's going to New York.
It's going to New York Comic Con. Yeah, that's been like the benchmark of here's another year of me doing this full time. Where am I at now? You know, what am I doing? You know, the first year I went, I was an attendee. The second time I went, I was a guest. Third time I was a panelist. Like, it's been all these different things.
But that's amazing. So like literally every year you're like sneaking up the whatever chain of
the ladder. Yeah. At this point now, I walk in. I know virtually everyone. You know, either I know them or they know me, or 2 degrees, 3 degrees of a situation. Literally, this year I was only there for a day, right? Because I had another event in Indianapolis, New Creek line. But while I'm there, I met Ray Kwan from the Wu-Tang Clan because one of the heads of New York Comic Con was walking around with him, introducing him to people, and felt that I was somebody of note to introduce to. So I'm like, thank you. It was amazing because, like, you know, he was talking to some other people, and I was standing there, and I wasn't going to, intrude or anything like that. You know, stay in my lane. But when the other guy introduced us, and I shook his hand, and I was like, look, you're one of the gods, okay? Like, you got to understand. Like, right now, I'm talking to somebody that, when I was a child, listening to your words, I never would have imagined that we'd be sharing air.
Why would you think that?
Ever, right? He's not the first rapper that I've met. Daryl McDaniel, DMC. We actually have tabled next to each other. So I'm selling my comics, and he's selling his comics, and we're right next to each other.
Oh my God.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
That's so cool.
It's amazing.
And you've met Stanley.
I have met Stanley. I've met many wonderful celebs, and that's also part of where my journey went. I've done celebrity moderating and hosting on panels, and that's been phenomenal to meet, very famous folks that are people. It's really easy for people to, oh no, you're just so amazing. They're like, look, I have shoes. I put them on like you do.
Right.
That's it.
I have shoes.
Listen, you don't think about it. You're celebs. No, you don't have shoes. You're like, yeah, no, I do.
Shoes.
I love Walmart. What? I love Walmart.
Have you ever regretted making the decision to
No.
leave the 9 to 5 job?
No. I've lost an apartment. I've struggled. There have been times when I had to stay at my mom's. Do not regret it at all. Like, in pursuit of my dreams, it has been the greatest ride that I've ever been. Like, it's I don't even know how to describe it, but it's one of those things where, like, every time you win a little, even if you lose something along the way, every win is yours.
Yeah.
Like, no one can claim it but me. I can share it with others, and I happily do so. But when you get that win, the best, the absolute best.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, I know that I've said this to you, and I honestly mean it, like, 100%, I'm not even pandering or being, or whatever, but when I made my decision to leave my job, you were absolutely the person I was thinking of. Like, Victor did it, and he's doing it,
You can do this.
and I can too.
Absolutely.
And it's been 4 years, and I can't even imagine doing that. Like, I absolutely love it. And the struggles, like stress is different.
Right.
The failures are different. They're
Yes.
like, I absolutely see them as
They're learning experiences.
yeah, they're
More than
learning
anything.
experiences.
Yeah, they're only failures if you don't learn anything.
Right, yeah, and you know, I'm enjoying this, and truly, like, doing something that I love is amazing. And like the people that I've met,
Right?
I never would have met them otherwise.
That's the best part. Like, literally the best part. That is the proof
Yeah.
in the pudding right there. The connections and networking that you've done.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have been in that space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the best thing ever. How many
That's
kids
right.
do you have?
5 total. Yeah. Four sired, 1 acquired. I have 1 stepkid. They are through blended relationships, but all my kiddos.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm that dad.
You're a good man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's important, right?
You're proving all the stereotypes.
That's my favorite thing in the world. You know, there's nothing better than being one of the first names on the emergency contact list for my kid's school. You know, because it's not the norm. You know, black man, even in the picture, let alone active, hitting up schools. I'm calling, I'm finding out stuff. Actually, it's funny. My daughter, she goes to Stewart Elementary, and they use Class Dojo, and I'm signed up for it, and her mother isn't. So when they send messages, I'm the one that's responding. And so I have a relationship with her teachers. Hey, how's she doing today? Da da da. You know, they're like, oh, she's good, Victor. You know, really appreciate you.
That's awesome.
I'm like, you know what? That's what we want.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think also, like, it's nice that society is finally acknowledging dads.
yes.
Because, I mean, I remember as much as I didn't have a good relationship with my father, one of his biggest complaints was that, you know, back when I was born, so in the 70s, you know, it was always by default, the kids went to the mom.
Right.
You know, and dads were not seen as somebody who could take care of kids.
Nurturing, we weren't any of that.
No. I know you don't want to sit down. Yeah. Well, good for you, and I'm so excited for all the new things that you're doing. And so you're revitalizing You Create Comics.
Yes.
And sending out little packages.
We are okay. So what's funny is we've got our website, You Create Comics, the letter U, CRE8comics.com, and that's being rebuilt. So while that's being rebuilt and made into something far more flashy and interesting, I started a Facebook page so I could still talk about the brand and get people to be interested in it. And through it, you can see different things. Some of our newest products, like I've got this thing called Idea Cards, and it's basically to fight against writer's block or to give you prompts to write. 27 cards, you shuffle them up, you can pick 1 to 5 cards, and that's a story. You know, figure out how to tell a story featuring the themes that you just pulled. And so for the last 3 days, I've showcased these cards, which are brand new, and pulled 2 cards and had to write a 6-sentence short story every day. And I'm encouraging people to try it. And it's gotten a lot of feedback, a lot of interest. People are very excited. I'm going to probably do another short commercial video about our Create Crates, which are... She literally did that because you leaned over. Really? That's what we're doing? You are baby drunk. I want you to know that. You are adorable. You're going to fall asleep in the car. I swear.
Yeah. Are we done doing this?
Are we done?
Yeah.
I'm just going to but no, the Create Crates are boxes of art supplies through the You Create line that can be geared towards a general audience. If you're a writer, if you're an artist, we have certain things for you. And I just had a recommendation today that, the holiday season is coming up. I need to be reaching out to bloggers that are, talking about those different little stocking stuffer gift ideas because this would be perfect for them. I'm like, okay, done deal.
Yeah.
So, that's the move for me. I'm just going to try to talk about it as much as possible, get it out there. I'm trying to get into the school systems a lot more. I understand that schools don't have the funding to really do stuff like they should. So right now, I've got 2 moves that I'm working on. I want to partner with a nonprofit so that way we can go for grants and get those to cover me going into schools. And then, I'm going to go to the camera on this one. There are a few Fortune 500 companies based right here in Columbus, Ohio. Kroger, Wendy's, Nationwide. I'm looking at y'all, and I will be reaching out to you to get a $2,500 donation. I want you to sponsor 10 schools each. So $2,500 per business. That's 10 schools, $250 dedicated to a single school. I will go in there, I will promote your business, but also promote comic books in the classroom. So that's going to be my biggest thing. I just want to see if I can do that this school year. If I can do that this school year, that's a good start, and we'll build from there. But that's 30 schools that wouldn't have this opportunity, that have students that probably could use this kind of encouragement.
Yeah.
And there you go. So
that's awesome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
Good luck for everything, and thank you for spending time with me.
Look, this was amazing. And did you have a good time too? This is like the greatest space in the world.
And that is Victor Dandridge, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed that discussion. Find him on Facebook, on Instagram. Look up youcreatecomics.com, UCRE, the number 8, the word comics.com. He's all over the place, and he's such an inspiration, such a fantastic artist, a wonderful human being, an awesome father. Seek out Victor Dandridge and be amazing. If you enjoyed this, please click like or subscribe, and consider going to my Patreon page, patreon.com/yoga happiness. Become a patron, like the others that have helped to support this. Now, as of the beginning of middle of October, all of my patrons, regardless of the level that you support at, you gain access to my free morning AM yoga classes. That's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, always 6 a.m., sometimes 7 a.m., depending on if anybody shows up to the 7 a.m. So that's a reward that I have just now started, and I'm happy to do so. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you next time.